So welcome to another Photoshop School Live. Today we're looking at just really within Photoshop, and we're going to be looking at changing images as if we're building a portfolio book, really looking at smart objects and kind of a little bit of text and everything else with it and things really. So we're going to be working on to create a simple image like this anyway, and then we'll be kind of going through things just to look at how we can get from one place to another and things really. So let's straight away kind of from within Bridge, we're just working on JPEG images today. So we're going to be working within Photoshop, even though we can obviously do certain things within the Bridge and the Lightroom environment, if that's what we were going to use. Yeah. So let's kind of just click into this first folder of Charlotte, and this is a headshot session with one of our clients that became a model, and basically we've got great variety in here and things ready. And in fact, some of these you might have seen in the background in previous sessions where we've actually had them printed up. Today though, excuse me while I take a quick drink, today we're looking at how we kind of create either a portfolio book or our own kind of PDF or that kind of thing, but we're looking at something as well that is big enough for us to kind of create wall art with as well and things, okay? So if I just click into the headshots, this is just a kind of less images. So in other words, we just copied in the best of the best to actually really kind of give us some kind of great photographs. We're not going to be using any third-party software today or whatever it is. We're working on image flow and image creativity to actually kind of give us that kind of great selection. But as I said, we are looking at creating a project, as it were, and things ready. So I'm going to click on to the first image here, which is the 59, and double clicking it will bring it into Photoshop for us from within Bridge. And we're working on the full resolution file, but it has been cropped down. So usually at this stage of obviously all of the photographs would have been worked on in a basic way in Bridge before being processed into a JPEG file. And the JPEG would be pretty much what I'm working from all the time, unless it was a commercial job where we're looking at high-end stuff. So for me to begin with, really what I want to do, if I'm using this as a front cover to a book, is kind of I want something that is going to be pretty much dynamic on a shelf. Rankin, fashion photographer Rankin, basically launched a book a while ago with kind of a red mist cover, as it were. I think it was called Play. So let's kind of create something very, very similar. So in other words, you've seen in other films that we've created on the Photographer Academy, adding kind of colors across images and kind of using blend modes and so on. And that's what you want to do here. So the first thing we're going to do is I always get into the habit of Control-J to duplicate the layer. So on our layers palette here, we can see that we've got two layers running. Then I'm just going to click on to the create new fill layer or adjustment layer, and I want to click on solid color. Now, in this case, I want to go in and basically let's choose one of the kind of the deeper reds. So we want to kind of work in a little bit more kind of shocking, whether it's going to be a darker red. Let's just kind of come up to a more kind of solid. That's perfect. And all I'm doing is clicking on to the color picker to actually choose the different kind of reds that I want and so on. So something with a little bit less or more kind of zap with it. So once I've pressed OK, the solid color is put here. Now notice that what I didn't do is click over onto one of these side colors, the foreground background color, to give me a kind of the color. I went straight into the create solid color. If I was creating a new layer and I wanted to fill that with a color, that is when I would actually go into then go and just select on a color through the color picking over here. And then I would actually go in and basically either Alt backspace to fill it with the foreground color or Control backspace to fill it with the background color. Okay, so in this case, Alt backspace would have given me the pink. And then we can see here, then basically this is a solid color. That why I kind of chose to go through the route of the adjustment layer is by double clicking onto here, I can now go in and basically change it to any color that I want. Okay, so I can just press OK, and at any stage it's adjustable. So it's a kind of a non-destructive, whereas to do it for the top layer, I'd have to go through the same route in basically clicking onto the color picker, going and choosing another color, pressing OK, and then I would have to actually fill that in the same way, Alt and the backspace. So two ways to do the same thing, all right? Really down to yourself. We'll just throw that one away for a minute, just so we don't get confused. And we're working on this adjustment layer. Let's go back into our reds, pressing OK, and we've got our solid color. The next thing what we want to do is just go into the blend modes, and we're going to go into something like darken or multiply are going to be our main two things. Multiply, as you can see, will give me a slightly more detail in the mid-tone compared to the darken, which it's going to look like it's brightening the whites more and things really, okay? So it depends on the contrast level that you want. Again, as I said, just coming up to here and changing the different blend modes. Obviously, if you work in light and screen, they work in the reverse, okay? So they're going to work in the adding color to the blacks, whereas the multiplying the darkener, adding the color to the whites. Obviously, things like color burn will give you more contrast and so on with it, but you can play around with these to your heart's content. So into the darken mode for the more the contrast, and at this stage, if I want to just take some of the opacity out, I can just actually use the scrubby tool along the opacity here. So in other words, as I come up over the top of the scrubby and I move it to the left, it will kind of add less opacity. So in other words, it's not a solid. And if I move it to the right, it will actually create the solid and things really. But I like the solid overall red that we've got going on in here. Right, let's add in some text like I just showed you on the sample before. And then at this stage, just clicking onto the text tool, dragging out what is called a bounding box. So that's going to be the restraint of it. Straight away, lorem ipsum is basically put in this fake text, yes. But all I want to do is press the Shift key and type in face, F-A-C-E. And at this stage, Control A to select all the actual text here. And at this stage, I can just go to the top, go and choose the kind of the font that I might want to actually use. That's really down to you. And in the same way, we can use scrubby. So in other words, instead of clicking onto the what size do we want, yes, I can just click onto or hover over the T here and then click and then push it to the right to make it bigger or push it to the left to make it smaller as such really. So once we've got the text in the size that we want, if you find that you've lost a part of the word or letters, it's the bounding box is not big enough to show it. So if I just grab the bottom of the bounding box, this middle kind of guide, you'll start to actually see how it kind of starts to show itself. So if we kind of click off that for a minute, you can see straight away that whatever the text font was, it happened to be in yellow. If we basically want to turn that white in a minute, we'll kind of show you how to do that. But really, we're working on the kind of the graphicness of the image as such. Because we're working in layers, remember, until we squash it or flatten it, everything is pretty much adjustable as long as you're not affecting the main image itself. So soon we're going to go in and lighten and brighten the background image, in other words, layer one, but we're going to do it in a destructive way, and then I'm going to show you how to actually do it in a non-destructive way as well, so you can kind of come back and forth to it. Right, let's first of all do the text. So let's double click onto the text on the actual layer box. and that highlights it straight away. If I want it white, let's just click on the color in the top here and then go and select pure white top left corner, and we're pretty much done. Then what we want to do is kind of look at the the way that the text is going to work. So we want to bring up the character box, and we click on this little character folder box at the top here, and that will give us this other box that is now appeared. Yeah. And what this is going to do is allow us to change the fonts in the same way as far as the scrubby is concerned. We can also change its metric as far as how it works together, how to make it taller or smaller. We can also make it kind of come closer together. And all these things are under our control. And that's obviously the whole point of things, is we want to be control freaks. So let's move the text closer together. So we're just going to click onto this scrubby and start to actually move them closer and closer, and then further and further apart. And then obviously, as far as if we want them to touch is concerned, we can just drag them to, wrong to the left, Mark, drag them away to begin with, till they move past each other. And then drag it back to the left. So we're going to just get them to just touch as far as their letters are concerned. So it starts to almost kind of merge into one. And obviously this is just down to your personal taste of what you want to do. I think we should just push those away just a little bit more. Notice now that even though I haven't got the text selected, but the text box layer is still live, I can actually go ahead and adjust the text itself away from each other without any trouble. Okay, so we've got our kind of basics there, and pretty much straight away, let's just kind of drag that back into the palette dock, and so that can actually collapse itself. So now you can see we've basically got our text, our font to do with what is the box, and we're at phase one. If we want to add some color to it, we got two ways to do it. We can either double click it and basically choose the actual color, yeah, or we could actually just add in a color adjustment layer, just like we added on top of the image itself. Right, I mentioned about destructive and non-destructive adjustments, yeah? As a rule, I mentioned that I basically made a duplicate layer straight away with it and things, really, all right? If I wanted to make a destructive adjustment to it, I could just quickly go into Control L, which brings up the levels dialog box, brighten the whites, darken the mids, darken the blacks, and then straight away I've made an adjustment to that image. Now as soon as I press OK, I've basically screwed up that kind of layer. In other words, I can't go back in and adjust it once more. So if I really want to work in a non-destructive way, let me just throw that one away a minute. Even with a duplicate layer, so Control J, yeah, I would now go in and click on the new adjustment layer, but in this case we would want to go, instead of actually doing the solid color we did before, I would actually want to use either levels or curves. In this case we're going to do levels. So in exactly the same way here, I'm going to brighten the whites, darken the mids, blacken the blacks. So straight away now I've got quite a dynamic kind of look to the image. And the great thing about it, of course, it's adjustable. So if I just close that dialog box down for a minute, let's switch it on. And if we say it's a bit too much in the effect, just double clicking onto the actual levels kind of icon, I can go in and basically change it back a little bit more. So this is where we are non-destructive within the image itself and things. Okay, so destruction or non-destruction of the adjustments. Once we're kind of happy with an image, so something like this has got several adjustments to it, color obviously, text, adjustments as far as the finish is concerned. Probably this is going to be saved as a PSD file. before anything else, because you might want to come back and adjust it at some stage. Remember, a PSD file would be a image that you can basically go back and adjust those layers. So if we just go to File and we save now, because if I just hit the word save and it was a JPEG image before, it's going to ask me what I want to actually save it as, and straight away it comes with the option of a Photoshop file. So that's fine. I'm just going to press save to it, just going to press OK. So some of the good things about working with layers is that when we start to work on perhaps other images then, so let's just kind of pull up another shot. So let's go and work on this top image. There was another one I liked with the handout. It hasn't been selected here. In fact, let me just go back to, there we go, I like this image here. So if I just come back into this one, double clicking it, that'll open it in Photoshop. If I go now and I drag, or select I should say first, these two layers, and I just drag them on and hold above here, and I just drop them onto the other image, straight away it's copied across what I wanted. So instantly, if I want the same effect across different images, I can either make an action to do it, or in this case, as you saw, I can basically just kind of drag them across. So we could copy them, select all, copy, we could make an adjustment layer, we can make them into a group, we can do them in different ways. So in other words, if I just group these together for a minute, select both of the layers, click onto the group, if we go ahead and just choose another photograph, and we go back to this image here and we just grab that group in the same way. If I drag it and release it onto another image, it works in the same way. So now I can just go in and basically move the kind of the icon or wherever it is around the specific kind of photograph that you want. Things ready. So that is how I would work when I'm kind of looking at different ideas or different images and so on. And obviously there might be times where we have to duplicate that image, and we just go into the adjustment tool again with the levels, and specific to that photograph we start to actually darken elements. So we might even have to go to the bridge window as such really, and recover some of the detail that we've lost and things really. So good for a poster, good for a kind of a portfolio book, you know, good for a web kind of thing, and obviously brilliant for the likes of Instagram and so on with it. Right, so if we were creating the likes of a portfolio book or go into our own printed book from the beginning, let me just save these minutes. So we're just going to save as in this case, and we'll just press save. It automatically remembers that it, when I go to save or save as, yes, it instantly comes up with the Photoshop file. So those are actually being saved with the other bits on there. And obviously if I close that down, that basically goes as well. So let's start blank and start to look at a kind of a book that is also possibly going to be featured in a exhibition or something like that, with it, our own exhibition and so on. What its size is that exhibition going to be? That's really down to you, of course. But let's kind of work on a book that is going to be 24 inches square. Theoretically, it might only be 8 by 8 that we're going to go to print with, but in fact, I want these images big enough to actually go to a 24 by 24 on a wall, if that's what I want. So the first thing would be going into File, New. And in this case, I want to create a certain size, okay? So this is going to be book page 1. And we're going to turn this into inches. I'm going to turn this now into 24, wrong button, 24. And he said select before I got going. So let me do that again. File, New. We're going to go into page 1, book, page 1. And we're going to go inches. And we're going to go into 24. We're going to do this as 24 as well. Oops, wrong button. And we're going to turn the resolution into 240 dots per inch. That's the usual size I'm going to print with. So at this stage, when I start to work on the master projects, if it's a template I might want to use time and time again, before I do anything else, all I'm going to do is centralize by dragging in some lines to snap to the middle. And it's going to do the same thing when we get to the middle of the page and things. If you find that it's not snapping to the middle, if we go into the snap to, and we want to make sure that guides is basically there, and it basically is snapping to the document bounds as well with it and things really, okay? So in the same way, if we just kind of move it, you'll see that straight away it's gone solid and just goes from here. If you know you want something like an inch per side, then obviously you can see that the ruler is set on pixels here where I want it in inches. So to change it straight away live on the screen, I'm just going to double click onto the rule bar, turn this into inches, I'm going to press OK. And then what I want to do is to make sure I'm dragging it into the 1 inch. And you can see as we kind of push it in and out, how it kind of moves to it. If you want to move in closer to actually get it dynamic on it to the inch, then you can basically just kind of push from here. All right. So again, let's just work a little bit quicker. Let's drag another one just to the side, another inch, and then down an inch. And remember, this is just being used as a guide for us to make sure that TTD23, oh, there we go, here. So within the kind of the page layout, we're able to now kind of really start the kind of, what am I trying to do? Well, if I want to have a layout which has basically, let's say, 4 images, the first thing that I would do is decide on the size of image we're going to go in here. So if it's 24, probably 8 inch or 7 inch is going to be the biggest that I want around each side. So I'm going to go File, New. At this stage, I'm just going to click onto inches. I'm going to do 7, and then remember it's got to be in the same resolution to equal the size. I'm going to press Create. If I just press D for default for a minute and I Alt backspace, that fills that image with the foreground color. So let's just drag this now onto the screen, and you can see that we've basically got the image. So if we're thinking that this is 12 inches wide here and this is obviously 7, is it big enough? I think we should go bigger. All right, so in this case, I'm going to go to Image and Image Size, and at this stage, into inches once more, and we're going to turn this into 8 inches. It remembers, because it's locked, that if I turn it into the next size, one size is going to move up. So you can see we're pretty much there. At this point now, I'm just going to maneuver the images, and I'm just going to shift click now, and as I drag the one, I'm going to press the Alt key, which duplicates. So in this case, we've got them all laid out now in a kind of a group of images. So I've created a group, all right? Just selected those 4, and then basically hit on group, and then this is giving me my group of 4 images. So 4 8x8. Now, what I want to do next is basically be able to kind of have these adjustable, and I also want to actually use this more as a mask than I do anything else. So the first thing, because I want it to work quite smart for me, I want to create a smart object at this time. So from the layer, I'm just going to right click and convert to smart object. I'm going to do exactly the same with each one of these. Now, I could have converted one of them to a smart object and then copied them, but basically I would have had to actually convert to smart object as a copy then, okay? Otherwise, every time we adjusted an image, it basically would have adjusted all 4 of them together and things really. So that's why we did it individually. The next thing what I want to be able to do is on each one of these, I want to create a mask. So if I press the Control key and then press on the thumbnail of that layer, it makes a selection of the black square. And then if I create a mask, straight away it's done. I do exactly the same. Select the layer, then Control, then select the thumbnail, then hit the mask. Select the layer, okay, hit Control, select the thumbnail, hit the mask. If I, by mistake, press the Control key and basically don't select the layer above, okay, it's going to make a selection of the top layer without selecting this layer. So then you'd need to actually just select the layer. So again, the systems that we're doing all the time. Just then we go in and we make that layer. What I would recommend to you is that you now unlink all of these masks and images. The reason being is that when I drag an image on or underneath the background, what I want to make sure is that basically if I want to move the image around, I don't want to move the mask. I want it to stay in the same place. So these are pretty much actually kind of locked in position. Yeah. So if I just go back to Bridge again, and let's say we're working on a different set of images that are a part of the collection. So let's work with the Joneses. Yeah. So these are the images that we're going to use. What I'm going to do is basically just drag this window onto my other screen, okay, for now. So I can just go ahead and basically drag an image onto the page. And because the top image of these four was selected, you can see it's put it on top of everything else. I'll show you how to fix that now in a minute. Because I've dragged it in, it basically is giving me a bounding box to fit the size. So in other words, what I'm doing now is basically having to manually adjust things to fit a size, okay? So it's kind of limiting us, and it's very, very slow. Then I would obviously have to drag it underneath and then basically try and put a mask on top of the image that I want, and so on. You know, we're creating often havoc for ourselves because we're not thinking the way that things are basically trying to work together. That's why, I'm just going to delete this for now, okay? That's why we turned all of these to smart objects. Let's bring this back in again, okay? So at this stage, all I really need to know is where I'm going to grab images from. And then on this layer, I'm going to right click it and I'm going to replace contents. And at this point, if I didn't know where it was buried too deep in where our portfolio images were and so on, I can just go and find that URL and just on my system and find where it's going to go. And then basically from here, just double click it. And now you can see already what it's doing. I'm now going to actually move this image to its new position. So it basically, if I just Control T, you can see the bounding box is exactly the same size. Now, if I was to make this image based on the resolution of all my kind of photographs that are not cropped and so on with it, when I was to do that same technique again on this layer or in the future once it's been saved, so if I do it again and I right click it and I replace contents, the great thing about a smart object, it remembers what you've done. So if I kind of just do the same thing on this layer, remember, select the layer in whichever way you want, right click it, replace contents, go and choose another photograph, do your transform to make it fit. So remember, even though it's slower at this point, when we go and do the same process on the next page for another subject, it's basically done. Select the next layer, replace contents, choose an image, Control T, transform. Don't hit the Shift key, of course, anymore within Photoshop, because that would actually make it be kind of fully adjustable instead of refraining it from changing. Let's make that a little bit bigger. Remember, if I have this bigger on this master, when I go and change it the next time, that particular position will be bigger in the frame than just the resolution. Last but no means least, replace contents. Go and choose an image. Let's do the sides. Once more, Control T, transform it. Move it down. Okay, at this point we save it, so Shift Control S is save as. Let's go into the images and folders here, and we'll just call it new folder. Let's go 0, portfolio book 21. Double click it. Okay, so that's kind of page one. Obviously, we would usually flatten this layer to kind of save it. However, once we've saved the master, as it were, this book page one, yeah, I could now go in and basically go File, Save As. Yes, I could create a new folder in here, and it's Face Pages. Double click it. And if I just turn it into a JPEG now, okay, basically this will now kind of book page one, save, pressing OK. You can see it's saved as, but it's opened it back up for me, and it's kept it the same. So all I did was save its kind of contents flattened elsewhere because it was already unflattened, but I told it to save it as a JPEG. So this is how kind of quickly this kind of thing can work now once we've created a template. Right click it, replace contents. We go and find, do you remember what we were doing before? We basically wanted a series of images. Let's 5 review. We'll go into Charlotte's images, Charlotte's headshots. This is my kind of on computer URL, as it were. We'll shrink that down now. I'll just paste in the URL if we didn't know where it was. First of all, go in and change the image. It's done it in resolution. Replace contents. Same thing. Remember, at this point, I can just move the images into wherever I want because I've got the auto select layer clicked on. And then replace contents once more. Just go in and choose another photograph. Remember, this is the one that was naturally bigger. And then just go and choose the other one. Replace contents. And let's just do the profile. Moving her in place again. So once more, all I've got to do is File, Save As. Yes, Face Pages, JPEG. And all I've got to do is replace its number to 2, press Save. And this is a really quick way for us to actually work. And if we want to add the kind of the red effect across all of these images, of course, then we could just go into Select, Solid Color, choose the red, whatever we chose it to be before. And then we actually change it into the darken mode again, of course. Yes, but we just want this to affect these images. So in other words, if we just put these into a group, and now with this image selected, we press the Alt and we allow the little kind of arrow to kind of appear between the two layers of the group and so on. Now it just affects the layers below. If I didn't have that, then basically it could kind of put it across all the other kind of colors and things really. And in the same way, if you need to actually go in and adjust different images for different effect or whatever it would be, then obviously you can just go in and do it and things really. At the same point, we can go in and switch it off. We can actually change the opacity. We can go in and basically change the opacity, I said. And we can go in and actually make adjustments of the overall kind of the effect of actually the lightness and the brightness of the image. So in Photoshop School, we've looked at creating something that will be able to be printable as well as obviously a book size. What I'd recommend to you though, if you are going out to print, whether it's photographic print or commercial print will need to be in CMYK, photographic print would be in RGB, but you need to obviously, for file transfer really, you don't need it as big as it needs to be. So you only ever supply them with a PDF for commercial print or a JPEG for each page for a photographic print and things. Hope you enjoyed this Photoshop School. I'll see you on the next one. Take care.